anyway. Okay, welcome to this backlog bonanza review meeting. Yeah, so my plan was to go back over this paper doc and figure out what happened and what didn't happen and what needs to happen. So I was just going to start from the top and go down. But before I do that, does anyone have questions or thoughts? Okay.
I can write down action items, I guess, because I'm assuming that is going to be a thing that we need to do.
That would be useful. That's a good point. Thank you, Mark.
Absolutely. Capturing them in the same doc we keep the rest of our action items, perhaps in a slightly different section, would be great.
Yeah, that was my plan.
That's perfect. All right, let's start with RFC 2048. It's closed. That's exciting. Sounds like we did the thing.
Quick procedural note. The top of the doc currently says people to assign work to and lists 6 people. One of those people is not currently on the team, so if we have anything currently assigned to them, we may wish to reassign it if it's not already done.
Yep, good point.
Okay.
I'm just taking that section out because we're going to replace it with action items anyway.
Sounds good.
RFC debuggable macro expressions. Let's see where this landed. Looks like we moved this also. I think this was another one yeah, good. We had some coverage and we moved to MCP. Perfect. Over constraining and omitting unsafe. So this is still open.
Looks like this got assigned to me. I would be happy to write this up and take the action item for it.
What was our conclusion? RFC bot and close. Sorry?
I'm still.
Go ahead, Scott.
You muted yourself for what it's worth.
Oh, I think a notification popped up while I was talking. Great. I'm still planning on writing an RFC here, but it's been, I kind of finished my edition stuff before that.
Okay. I don't remember what RFC you were planning to write, but that sounds good.
Just one, we had a long conversation about what does it mean for a method to be unsafe, and what does that mean about preconditions? What is the difference between unsafe trades and unsafe functions in trades, which I think we all agreed about, but
so is the RFC sort of
don't do what we
informational?
Want, so, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds great. There has been some discussion over time of change, having a different keyword and things like that, but that's not what you're proposing to propose.
No, just one that more explicitly says like we would be allowed to do this if we wanted, because that's what unsafe functions mean.
All right, that sounds like a good starting point.
Do you want to reassign this item to Scott, or does it make sense to leave it on Josh?
Well, it sounds like the immediate step is to close the existing one. That I think.
Yeah, that was my impression.
Josh.
And I'm assuming that despite the fact that Scott has plans to write a new RFC in this area, that this one we want to close, not postpone, correct?
I think so. Scott,
Okay.
Do you think you could open, prior to writing an RFC, you could add some like design notes or something that just captures in bullet form a few, maybe like a link to the Zulip?
Yeah, sure.
We could even potentially mentor that out at that point. That would be my guess, but that would be great to have just some record we can point to.
Cool.
And then maybe link it from the.
Sorry, but aside from the procedural issues, the point of having a new design is that you'd be removing the part where callers can omit unsafe blocks when they know that the implementation they're calling is not unsafe. That's the substantive change between this RFC and the one that you're proposing, Scott?
Oh, I'm not proposing any actual language change in mine, just a like record what we believe to be the state of unsafe so that people can look at it and say, oh, I'm not supposed to be using unsafe functions the way I currently am?
Maybe I'm confused. So you're saying you're going to write something that's separate from the proposal in this RFC, like it's not about
Correct.
unsafe trait methods?
Correct.
It's just defining what unsafe means at all points. I'm wondering if it even needs to be an RFC or like a reference PR. But either way, really. I'm not like against this idea. I'm kind of would like to close the RFC, but not with prejudice, so to speak. Sort of encouraged. I would be okay if the author wanted to open a project.
I agree with that.
And we talk about it again.
I guess what I'm saying is that the reason I ask is because I think I still want what this RFC proposes.
We could accept it even, or try to.
Like,
I don't remember the details of what the RFC proposes, though. I guess if it had a champion in you, Taylor, that might change my like overall take. But
I don't know like what bandwidth I have to spend on it, but I'm happy to like do my best to respond to comments. I don't know what the best like procedural step is for that. I guess what I'm just saying is that closing seems weird when I actually like actively want this.
My recollection of the conversation was something like everyone thought this made sense, but we weren't sure what it meant precisely around when you could actually take advantage of the fact that something wasn't done unsafe.
Yeah, I think
the definition in the RFC, we said we weren't sure that was what we wanted specifically.
Right. I think in principle, we all had a pretty good consensus on that it's acceptable to leave off the unsafe on the implementation of a method for a trait where it's defined as unsafe, on the premise that your implementation doesn't need unsafe and you don't want your body of that method to be unsafe. I think the part where we had disagreement to the point of wanting to defer this was under what circumstances the compiler can guarantee that it knows you are calling a specific implementation for which the body doesn't require an unsafe block, and therefore you don't have to have an unsafe block. That was the part where, in principle, it made sense. In practice, we weren't sure when we could guarantee that. I think that we would probably accept something for the first half of that without issue.
That's my recollection as well, although the sort of second half feels like maybe it's just a matter of implementation concerns, what we wind up with, but I guess that might preclude us from saying we want a design that we think we can't implement. But
I think we could implement it.
It feels implementable to me. It's certainly like less interesting. It's like a less interesting version of specialization, right?
That's kind of, I think, what concerns people.
I don't see it as very hard to implement. What is there a concern? I guess there are I'm trying to think what other ways it's possible for functions in general in an impl can be less precise than the trait, or like more accepting than the trait. This would be the one case where allowing, like, reflecting that, right? Like the lifetime signature, for example, can be different.
And we could do the same for const.
Where you are allowed to add const, you mean?
Right.
Yeah.
I think what I don't love about this is that it's like an ad hoc. Maybe it's okay.
It's like ad hoc sub-trading.
Yeah, like you can write it for one instance, but you can't write a generic function that says I apply to any instance where it is not unsafe.
I mean, that's the same. That problem is similarly being kind of solved more generally in sort of some of the like const trait working group stuff, right? But I don't know. I guess it feels to me like I don't.
That feels like a different problem.
That problem solved right now.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to make the.
It feels different to you to say like, oh, this method, must be const, to say this method must be unsafe. Nico?
Yeah, it does. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm not familiar with what that working group is doing. But I recall it being more at an impl level, first of all, and this feels more fine-grained potentially.
I thought I remembered it also being.
It seems like
I could be misremembering.
It seems like a refinement.
Like there were.
Like it seems like the mechanism we want here is being able to refine traits, and say like this is a subtrait that refines the signature of that.
Yeah.
Item in the super trait. Anyway.
I don't know.
I mean, straw poll. Who would be okay with accepting the RFC as is? I guess is the question.
I would, but.
Or maybe who would not? But
does it include the you can definitely call it as unsafe without the unsafe?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
I would be okay with it given two constraints, that we stated that the only thing we guarantee is that if you know the exact concrete type, you can do so, and not if you know something about the type but not everything. And having some kind of future extension for, we probably want a general mechanism like this for unsafe and const that allows I take anything where this could be declared as unsafe or not as unsafe or declared as const. If we had those caveats added, I would be happy to sign off on it.
Definitely sets a precedent. I would want constant to work similarly,
right, exactly.
Probably.
Or rather, I wouldn't want a different mechanism used for const than used for this. We would want to align the two.
So I would definitely be happy with the sort of more boring version that just lets you omit the keyword from the trait, but you still have to be in an unsafe context to call it. I recall a bunch of uncertainty around like, how sad are we that you can write this function without unsafe, put a to do in the body, and then it's a breaking change to put unsafe on, even though the trait said it was always unsafe. Now I think the pushback on that was that it's always a breaking change to add unsafe to a function definition. So if you want to be unsafe in the future, you always have to put unsafe on it. So maybe that's fine, but.
Yeah.
All right. I want to move on from this so we actually do the purpose. Taylor, I think if you and Scott want to like talk it out, I think I would be okay with. I would be okay if you moved to accept. Personally, I wouldn't guarantee. I want to like sit on it, but I feel happy in general with the premise of we try to make your life better when we know things. That said, we used to have logic like that and we took it out, but I think that's because it was applying in the type checker, and it was rather difficult. It was much better for us to be able to just talk about, oh, it's a trait method, we're going to enforce all the signature of the trait method and not necessarily know which impl yet, because inference isn't done yet. But unsafe checking happens after inference is done.
Yeah, there's also certainly precedent for this. Like you know what the associated type of returned by a trait method is, right? When you're using a concrete type trait impulse.
Yeah.
Like if you call next on an iterator, like you know what the return type of that is. It's not some nebulous like.
Yeah.
The item type is known.
Right. So that's a really good point. Yeah, I'm in favor of moving forward with it myself. But
I made a note of what the consensus seems to be, and
so what's the action item? The action item is
well, I think somebody needs to pick up the
Taylor
RFC
and Scott to work it out and either move to merge or.
Yeah, I'll chat with Scott. I think maybe on Zulip if that works for you, Scott, and then we can I'll try and follow up either on Zulip with other folks, or if it seems like there's consensus, I'll leave a comment on the RFC.
Great. Eager macro expansion 2320. Still open. There was some recent discussion, very little, or I don't know how much. I think all these notes summarize my point of view still. Bit nervous, connected to name resolution. We didn't really come to a conclusion on what to do. Do we know
Since
whether
we previously discussed this, I know other things have come up that would like this, including things like inline assembly, where it'd be nice to pull out more concept of we evaluate this and pull it out of individual cases.
Felix, how much do you remember this?
I don't have
You're
the
the
details
scheme
in
guy.
cache. Yeah, I mean, I don't have the details of this particular RFC in cache. I remember I was critical early on, but I they incorporate a number of pieces of feedback, so I don't know what the current status is.
I'm wondering about. Okay.
In the notes here, if you do like say besides me, it talks about poking like Petrochenkov, but I don't see any feedback from Petrochenkov on here. I'm assuming we just didn't poke him, which might be my fault.
Who authored this? Okay. I mean, one thing I was wondering is, I would sort of like this to be a project. I don't know. Trying to figure out the scope of this. Well, that's an easy item. It's just not very conclusive. I either want us to say we're going to commit to going forward, or we're like, not that we have to accept it, but that we have the resources and would be willing to accept it, or that we're going to close it, kind of in some form or another. And one thing that I think is a middle ground, which I'm sort of okay with, is we're going to close this, but encourage an MCP or encourage a project proposal so that we can sort of try to fit it into a more structured process.
I don't know. I'm not sure I feel like we can have bandwidth. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I lean towards, I would like.
It feels like not a burning need to me, and I feel like it doesn't really fit into the priorities that, at least sort of my interpretation of the priorities. It doesn't feel like a obvious ergonomic win, or
there's nobody in this team who's like,
yeah,
who's strongly advocating for it or wants to champion it. I propose we postpone it and encourage a project proposal at some point when we open up macros to more macros discussion. Objections?
I'll just note that Petrochenkov did chime in like like very early on in the process, like sometime in like 2019. So early in 2019, I think. So it's not that they're ignorant of it. It's just been a long time.
In a positive or negative, or do you not remember?
I think it's changed so much since then. I'm not sure it's meaningful to
Okay.
interpret their remarks at that time.
I propose we do this. Yeah. Postpone. Our reasoning is, I mean, we're generally been deferring advanced macro machinations, right?
Yep.
And I think this fits in that category. I would consider a bigger effort around macros 2.0 or at some point. Around, yeah, macros 2.0 or larger macro extensions via project proposal, but need a good champion or someone with expertise within LangTeam.
Okay. Who can do that?
I'll take it. Can you add the action item, no, Mark?
Yep, it's already done.
So derive no bound and derive field bound. I remember that we kind of, Taylor, you looked into this and kind of had good feelings, or I think you were feeling positive.
Just to recap, the actual RFC contents are like the sort of reference description is actually just changing the grammar that's accepted by attribute proc macros, so that you could spell the bounds the way that they wanted to allow, which would allow this to be implemented either in the compiler or as a third-party crate. I don't feel particularly strongly about that. We had chatted a bunch about sort of the proposed syntax and whether or not it was like actually secretly good. I'm trying to pull this all back into cache. Sorry.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, we were kind of thinking that like the exact derive changes that the RFC were suggesting wasn't what we wanted.
Yeah.
But that we generally kind of liked the idea of, oh, actually, this is a different
This is
RFC
a different one, isn't it? I think
there's a different RFC for the same problem.
I think I don't like this version. Like this, well, I don't know, but this syntax seems less appealing. Whoa, what's going on? Like there's a lot of variants of derive versus a way to specify in the derive. So maybe we just want to close this.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sorry for the confusion.
Okay. Action item. So I think our suggestion is basically right. Close this, but say this is a problem we would be interested in tackling if someone wants to look for sort of a targeted approach.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think it's also potentially worth noting that at least some of the improvements here could, in theory, come as part of like a larger effort around macros, I think.
Yeah.
Or, compiler extension or whatever.
Did we want to record this meeting?
I think we are.
I am recording it, I thought.
Yes, you are.
Oh, I'm sorry. I keep looking in the wrong place for that feedback.
There's a huge thing around derive and running proc macros and trying to run them in WASM when we can, and all this gigantic question that would be so cool to have something nice, but it's also enormous.
Yeah, that's kind of that seems orthogonal though, right? I hope.
Yeah, I actually think the RFC that I thought I was talking about, I actually kind of like, because the sort of first step is just we let macros have a little bit of extra syntax that would allow people to start implementing derives in nicer ways, right? And those types of derives in nicer ways.
It could. All right, let's keep moving when we get there, hopefully.
We should assign an owner to.
Oh yeah, sorry, we didn't do that. Who will take this? I can if nobody else wants to. I don't mind closing things. I'm the bad guy. I think, by the way, given that we're having this meeting, I'm just going to close and not RFC bot close, or maybe I'll check all the boxes. I think I like that approach. Okay. Unless anyone wants me to force you all to check your boxes. Inherent trait implementation 2375. I feel like my recollection is, nobody was still this, right? That there wasn't consensus on exactly what approach we would want to take if we wanted this.
I admit to not remembering it at all.
I like this idea, and I think like we should do some version of it. I don't know whether the specific proposal here is the one I want.
Yeah, that's sort of how I feel too. There is a real problem here.
+1.
This is a pretty easy solution, admittedly. So, right, I think that's why we came to the conclusion of let's do a project proposal. Let's back up a little bit from this specific solution and say that we would be okay to see someone, or we would consider tackling the problem, but we want to have a little more exploration of the design space.
Remind me if someone knows how this proposal handles overlap between methods in the trait and methods inherent impl in the inherent impl.
I don't remember.
My vague recollection is that it basically just adds an inherent method and it behaves like another inherent impl block. And if you have two things that can conflict even across inherent impl blocks, then you get an error.
Doesn't that make it a breaking change to add a default method to the trait?
Sounds like it would.
Let's just add that as a thing to address. Taylor notes, consider whether it becomes a breaking change to add default methods to a trait because they may conflict with pre-existing inherent methods.
Yeah, was the implementation on this was just adding impl blocks basically, right? It wasn't another phase in name lookup.
I guess there's a question then of even if it only adds the items that you specify explicitly, if it also adds the defaulted ones as inherent? Question mark.
I think we'd have to add the defaulted ones to do what people would expect.
I want to move on.
All right, sorry.
It sounds like Taylor, you're really keen to write this. That's what I'm hearing.
Sure, I can write a comment.
You seem to have a lot of ideas for interesting edge cases to explore too. All right. Yes, great. Please note that action item. Mark, RFC delegation 2393. Oh, I remember this. We're so bad. This is terrible. Bad in the sense that I think we requested this effort and then just failed to follow up. And it's got a lot of emojis of various kinds. I don't remember the details of how this actually works. It's still a pretty commonly requested feature. Yeah, these concerns all fit. Any thoughts from folks? I feel like we're still here, exactly here. Maybe we could ask what, maybe one thing to do is to leave a comment and try to see if there's still active interest in pursuing this or not.
I feel like, I don't know, I feel like that's insufficient. I don't know what people think, but to me at least, it feels like the thing that's actually needed is lane team bandwidth and not necessarily someone in the community who feels like they could drive it.
I think it's both.
Right, but I mean, I think the limiting factor in some sense, like I wouldn't ask for someone in the community if we don't feel like we have bandwidth. And I feel like that's true.
Yeah, in fact, I feel like the author on this RFC has actually already done a bunch of work to revise it in response to like our suggestions and try and shape it to be the right thing. And I wouldn't just ask them to do more work if we don't think we can.
I wasn't thinking of asking them to do more work. What I was thinking was trying to find out if they would be willing to do more work if we were willing to commit. But I do agree we should decide if we're not willing to commit, then it's just not an important question. I guess that's the question. Is there anyone here who wants to champion with working with them to push it through, or at least reading it again? I'm trying to decide. I think probably this is something to table for next year's and consider next year, but.
Can someone give me I'm skimming this. I don't plan to be like have digested it at all, but like I'm just really surprised this needs to have such coarse syntax when I would have imagined there'd be some kind of procedural macro that could get.
That's what I was just thinking.
This effect. That's my
I thought the problem was that you can't delegate in a procedural macro well because you don't know what the signature of the thing you're delegating to is.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, that makes sense. We don't have the information available.
If you have to like put it on the trait somehow, and that would be rough at best.
I propose we postpone this and indicate that we're going to be like, that we would want to consider it when we're done with sort of current, in the next phase where we're looking for big ideas, which we will announce. That's a side note. I think we should be announcing that.
Big ideas
sort of a vision doc thing, but
big ideas like macros that run after you have type inference done. or something.
Potentially, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we want to go through phases of the language, and we're not at this literally right now, this month or
Yeah.
this year, probably in the phase of like, we're going to add a big thing.
Yeah.
But we will at some point be thinking about what, maybe it's time to look at a big thing, and I would want to consider this then.
Postpone for after the edition, basically.
More or less, yeah. Till next year's roadmap is kind of what I'm saying. Like, I don't want to postpone it with 0. I like the idea of giving at least 2022 or some specific time when we would want to reconsider, because it feels better than just general postpone with no condition.
Yeah, I don't know. 2022 seems optimistic. We have a lot of stuff in backlog, I think, of like major features that are accepted but not fully fleshed out or used.
Yeah, but this may be more important than those. Like, I'm not saying we'll accept it. I'm just saying we would like to talk about it at the time when we're thinking about what to do.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. I guess we need an owner for the decision to postpone then.
I'm okay to take that one as part of my bad cop role. I don't think, unless someone else wants to. So let's put it this way: action item, postpone, but encourage to be discussed in next line team roadmap discussion. Okay. Simple postfix macros 2442. I remember a lot of back and forth on this.
Somehow I don't expect them to be simple.
Well, I think they are, but depends on your definition of simple. I think what this proposed was, Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, when you see this syntax, you resolve it, it basically gets kind of rewritten to this to this notation, something like that. So you resolve it with the standard macro resolver, taking these tokens and putting them in front.
I don't remember that it was tokens and not a value somehow.
It might be a expression pseudo token, the same way we have when you rematch, like when you've matched something with a matcher and then you apply a macro to that.
I just mean whether it evaluates inside the context of the macro or not is complicated in terms of knowing how far back the macro would go. Like if you made a postfix unsafe macro that wrapped it in an unsafe block, what would that do?
Yeah. I don't remember. Josh, do you remember what the RFC said?
I thought it was just basically the equivalent of putting it into a temporary variable and passing the value of that into the macro to avoid those things.
Yeah, okay. So it's a slightly different rewrite. It's more like rewrite to let temp equals foo. Something like that.
Where foo might be a very long expression potentially.
Right. Not quite that, presumably, because I don't know, but more or less that. It seems relatively simple. I mean, the main thing it's not is type as dispatch.
That was the problem last time we talked about it, as I recall. How important it is for dot to mean type dispatched.
Well, I think it was both, right? I think we weren't sure about how far back it, like, you know, there's benefits and negatives to it going back, you know, to expression or whatever. And there's also the type dispatch problem. And, you know, we could say it's not a problem, but he needs a decision.
Yeah.
It also feels like part of this sort of macro expansion effort to me, but I put a lot of things in that bucket.
It does, but it's It does, but it's a relative. It doesn't interact. Well, I'm trying to decide how much it interacts with hygiene. I mean, this kind of is a hygiene question, what we're talking about. So there's some interaction. I'd be okay with postponing this till 2022 as to consider in the next roadmap. Actually, that maybe should just be what postpone means altogether, but like it always means that. I do feel like a lot of people want this and it would be useful, but a lot of things fit that definition. How do people feel about postponing?
Makes sense to me.
I think reconsidering at a roadmap discussion makes sense. I am not sure I'm sold that it is sort of the right shape of solution, but I think it needs to be part of a roadmap discussion in some sense.
Yeah, I think the reasons that I'm in favor of this are, well, this may have a champion from Josh, but yeah, it macro hygiene, like part of overall macro 2.0 area plus some non-trivial questions, unsettled questions. Okay.
I know we're trying to move on, but I just want to double check my understanding of what was even proposed. The thing about that rewrite with let 10 people food, doesn't that like break auto borrows and stuff if you like expand into something that needs to you know, do a deref, auto deref and whatever?
Potentially, yeah.
It's not necessarily the right thing. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think if it's not, that's part of the, for me, like that, if it's not literally that if we puts the tokens in there, then it becomes a lot more complicated. But
yeah, that's true. It reminds me of the there was a conversation on internals the other day about macros that wrap a macro argument in unsafe and thus could be used to sort of unintentionally smuggle unsafe. So there was another place that wanted a like, I'm intending to just take a value, but it's a macro for other reasons, which makes me ponder if there's a more general thing there.
Yeah, so okay, we're gonna defer. Hygiene opt-out. Josh, you're okay
Nico,
with that?
Are you deferring? And
Oh,
Josh
yeah.
left.
Oh, Josh left.
Josh stepped out and said they'd be back, but I'm not sure if they're going to be back at this point.
I'll do it. That explains why they've been so quiet. I felt like I kept mentioning Josh and expecting Josh to speak up.
I kept debating about jumping and saying they posted in chat.
Okay. I remember they said they were going to leave it, but hygiene opt-out escaping for declarative macros 2.0. I think this is pretty clearly a postpone as well for the same reasons.
Cool. Okay. Nico, do you want to do that?
I'm starting to feel like I'm getting a lot of postpones. I'll take it this one because it's
Josh
a copy and paste of the previous one. Oh, hey, Josh.
Hello.
We just settled on postponing and reconsidering simple postfix macros at next roadmap. And we were trying to get your opinion and realized, or I was, and realized you weren't in the room.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
I am fine with postponing that. I would be sad if we closed it. I am perfectly fine with us kicking it down the road.
Okay, great. Teach. Oh, who's going to do this? Yeah, give this one to me. It's like the same comment. In fact, yeah, okay. Teach concat to join U8 and byte strings. We recommended we move this to the libs team at some point. Did we actually do that? Sort of.
Sounds like a perfect Josh task now.
We did sort of do that.
I would be happy to investigate and see if it's already been done.
Let's just take our,
and if not, take care
cells
of it.
off.
Yeah, I think it's as libs as it can get.
Yeah.
We just need to remove
Sure
the
looks
label.
that way, yeah.
So okay, the action item is remove tlang label. Basically, we say remove tlang label. Okay, and give and report that we are happy if libs is happy. All right, and Mark, you can do
Sounds
that.
good.
It's fine. Oh wait, I put that in the wrong spot. That was here.
I took care of the label, but yeah, a comment would be helpful.
Okay, permit underscore in type aliases 2524.
FCP close complete.
So shall we close?
It's already closed.
Oh, okay, great. Then we're done.
It was proposed, it was complete.
Awesome. Type changing struct update syntax. Oh yeah. I think we should accept this, and I encouraged them to leave some of the detailed inference write up. Oh, I see. 7 days ago. Okay. 26. Oh man, I'm so behind. Yeah. Okay. I'm okay with moving on this. It's not that big a change, and I think I could mentor someone through it. If folks are generally positive, I would be good to RFC approve myself. Does everyone know what this thing even does?
Is it the generic thing? I think there was like a couple of these.
It lets you, right now, if you have the ... the type of foo has to be equal to the type of bar, or the type of the result type has to be equal to the type of bar.
Right.
But under this version, they don't.
But I think
The
it's just like
types of the fields you're pulling in have to be the same instead.
but it's more restricted than that, right? It's just like the lifetimes can change because my memory, like it's not like arbitrary changes in the type are permitted.
I'm not interested in a restricted version. I thought it was. I think
maybe
like
I'm
that
wrong.
seems
It
more
is
complex.
more than just lifetimes. You can also do generics. So
Okay.
you're not allowed to do arbitrary struct A to struct B. What you can do is changing from struct A with parameter T to struct A with parameter U.
Okay.
Assuming that none of the fields that you are inheriting from the previous struct have type T in them.
Okay, yes, that sounds right.
So the really common case is I'm getting these 10 fields from the other A, and I'm replacing the T with a U, which is useful if you're doing a map or some other similar kinds of functions.
I think this will just sort of feel like, I mean, the implementation of this is pretty straightforward from what I can
Yes.
tell.
Yes.
Yeah.
I believe so.
I think we just need to FCP accept this, honestly. I don't think that there was any
The only question is if there's a breaking change. You could imagine some inference pathways where the type of A was not yet inferred. It gets inferred from bar. I guess an example would be something like struct foo of A, where A is option A, C is U32, and you do foo of A none.
It'll change where coercions happen potentially too, right?
Yeah, potentially. So there is a kind of backwards changey thing going on here.
So you had, Nico, you had the blocker on this one to review the inference details, and someone seemed to be volunteering on the RFC side. So if you want to review it and decide if there's any tweaks that need to happen before acceptance, and work with the person who volunteered to do the edits.
Yeah, I'm okay to work with them. I mean, I think I know the algorithm I want. I don't know how. I think it's hard to tell whether these are like theoretical inference failure concerns or more serious. It might imply we want to do it over an addition, for example, which means we got to act. But we could do that.
Sure.
The implementation is pretty easy. Like I think it's a few lines of code. If it's how I'm thinking about it.
We could optionally, if it turns out that there is an inference issue, we could always defer this to an addition. And that I don't think that stops us from accepting the RFC. We just may want to add a note in the RFC stating that if implementation considerations require us to, we may defer this to an addition boundary for inference reasons. Then we don't have to decide in advance if we think it's going to need that before processing the RFC.
One thing I'd like to bring up here, this is very much doubling. So I have a comment back in August about this. This is very much doubling down on the like current desugaring of FRU. is there any concern that this sort of can't really ever work with a non-exhaustive struct? I don't know how worried people are about if we should make that work at some point, but it comes up repeatedly.
I don't understand the connection, so can you make it a little more explicit? If it's a non-exhaustive struct, new fields might get added.
So right now we do not support FRU with non-exhaustive structs. Let me put a link to a comment.
I think that's because of the privacy concern.
I'll put a link to a comment there. This works because it's copying over fields, which means that it's sort of stuck with the privacy concerns. A lot of people expect FRU to work as just like move or copy. That's where it gets complicated, and then update those fields that it said on the type, which cannot be type changing, but would work for something like non-exhaustive if the fields are public.
There's nothing stopping us from, so I don't think that anything in this prevents us from fixing the idea of non-exhaustive FRU. We wouldn't necessarily be able to do it as a mem move, but we could always assign field by field every field that is not currently overwritten.
The concern is this. If you had like this, and then you add this field C, which has the same type as A, you've now broken this user.
I see. If you add a field that depends on the type. So
I thought you were not
non-exhaustive doesn't go on.
I thought you're not allowed to do FRU with a non-exhaustive struct outside the crate or something like that.
You are not right now.
The point
the
is,
open question was, what does accepting type changing update struct syntax
we could
prevent us from fixing that?
Well, but we could do it and say you can't change the type in that instance, for example. So I don't think it prevents us from fixing it. It just means it will behave a little differently.
Right.
That seems like a valid.
Yeah, it's also true that
say.
Non-exhaustive has a lot of limitations around what we actually sort of guarantee and.
Right. I'm not too worried about this. I feel like we could solve it. I do think it'd be good to note the interaction under future possibilities.
Agreed. But I think we should still try to solve the non-exhaustive thing, and this won't stop us.
Right.
Cool. And Esteban has a RFC that he's planning on writing. I don't know if people are aware of that one about default field values that maybe will start taking over from some of the FRU things here anyway. So we'll see.
All right. 152. We're not going to get through, but we're doing pretty okay. Hidden trait implementations 2529. This was postponed, proposed to postpone. Looks like that may never have happened. No, so somebody should do that. Who wants to do it?
I'll take that one.
Okay.
Save Nico from doing all the postpones.
Yay, thank you, Scott. Allied array size. This is a fun one.
This one was assigned to me, and I would be happy to take care of the follow-up on that. So I'll take the action item.
What is the plan? I would personally like to close the RFC.
So the original plan was.
Go on.
Well, so this is interesting. When this was originally discussed, we were saying, let's follow up and address this after we have min-const generics. We now have min-const generics, which means that the time for that follow-up is conveniently now. So I think that the appropriate response now would be, we'd like to see this. This needs updating to take into account that we now have min-const generics, rather than trying to revise this on this thread. We should close postpone. We should RFC bot postpone and request an updated version that takes const generics into account.
Presumably on a fresh
Unless
RFC.
people think that the right answer is, well, it depends. If we think the right answer is just revise this to take const generics into account, then we can post that response and then just wait. Or alternatively, we could postpone and request an updated RFC. Which do we think is going to be more productive here?
I think it should be a new thread, no matter what, personally.
Yeah,
Agreed.
I hate waiting through all long threads.
Yeah, I like this. That sounds great, Josh.
Okay, then I would be happy to post that and state, like, generally in favor, want to see this written on top of the newly available min const generics. Please start a new RFC and a new thread.
Cool.
Totally agreed. It feels like we're on track to have basically a Ravec in core now, and that will want exactly the same underscore. Oh wait, sorry, is this also about const or about lets?
I think this is about both, but they're somewhat different. Let is probably much less controversial.
I think we obviously want a const generics compatible version in let. Const opens a whole bunch of other questions.
Agreed. All right, that's fine. We can tackle those when the RFC is reopened. Or project, I'd recommend a project proposal, but okay. Got 5 more minutes. Associated type lifetime elision. This said that associated types are outputs, so they should link to inputs. However, there was some concern about confusion.
I closed this one.
It's been closed. Wonderful. It's too bad because I liked it, but then I think I decided I didn't like it that much. I think we merged this, didn't we? 2580. I guess we didn't quite merge it. Oh,
It's
yeah, we
merged.
did. Awesome. Okay. Nothing more to say here. Move along. Structural records. I want to close this personally.
Yeah, I was given the action item to close it, I guess, and I didn't do so. It looks like. I guess you can put that action item on my plate.
Let's record that action item and move on.
All right.
I just wrote a big comment on this thread about a week ago. I agree we should close it and come back after we've looked at other things.
Enum variant types. This is something I definitely want as a user. Feels like a big thing. I think postpone until next roadmap is the appropriate
well, in
move.
particular, our recommendation was we should close the RFC and say this needs to be a project proposal with a project group.
Yep, so basically that.
Right, but in this case, we're also saying that not now.
Right. Yes, I'm thinking to myself that I think like we have to provide some guidance, which we don't have right now, but about like big ideas and how to schedule them into our, like when they're welcome and when they're not. And I think we're sort of ad hoc defining a plan. But
effectively, here's the merge window for new features on the 3-year cadence.
Or something like that, yeah. I don't know if it's quite that, like it might come up, it might even be like, I don't know exactly how it works, but that's kind of what I'm saying, yes. Even if it was just like once a quarter, we're going to talk about big ideas and see if we have any bandwidth. But
Okay, who is getting this one?
I'll do it because I think
originally...
it's originally Taylor, but I was going
to say it was originally assigned to Taylor, but it doesn't have to be.
I'm okay taking it because I think I'm going to copy and paste my message from another place, basically saying, we agree this is a real problem. We don't think we have the bandwidth to take it on right now. We would like to encourage you to, like, when we are talking about roadmap ideas, we'd like to encourage it to be brought up again. Custom DSTs. Same, I think. Does anyone disagree?
Wait, but I thought did we not accept? We accepted a partial thing. I want to see that done first. So it seems like almost in some sense postponed, but not to a roadmap, but like to completion of ongoing work in this area.
Yeah.
We accepted 2580, and I feel like we should see what that gives us before we accept more.
Yeah, I agree that we should wish to see 2580 fully implemented and have time to gain experience. Would consider for a roadmap item after that. It's fine. Who wants to write it?
I'll write it.
Yay. Okay, great. I think we're going to stop here. It looks like this was already closed. So, but thank you all for coming. We got about halfway through this document. I better put like some note how far we got. Maybe we'll do another round of this later.
Double checking, am I checking boxes and FCP postponed for people who are here?
I say yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thanks everyone. Talk to you later.
Bye.